Young Heath tell us that the compliance costs are too great. Our question right here is, can America truly maximize its future to grow under the current tax system? That includes replacing 8.5 million new jobs and then creating a boatload of still newer jobs. Joining us now is New Jersey Democratic Congressman Bill Pascrell, Wisconsin Republican Congressman Paul Ryan, who serves as the ranking member on the House Budget Committee. Mr. Pascrell is on the Ways and Means Committee. Paul Ryan, I'll start with you. Can we maximize our potential to go replace the lost jobs and create new ones under the current tax code, including the tax hikes scheduled for the next few years?
Why, no, Larry, we can't. Look, we should tax income once at its source, never again. Immediate expensing, get rid of all the double and triple layers of taxation on capital. You got to remember, we're in a global economy now. Capital moves all over the place. We should have a tax code designed to gain maximum economic growth and job creation, not a tool for social engineering, not a tool for redistribution. It should be a tool for growth.
See, Mr. Pascrell, it's good to see you, Billy.
Larry, how are you?
If you fleece the rich, which is what's going to happen in 2011, as the top earners face higher tax rates, capital gains, and dividends and inheritance, you fleece the so-called rich, you are damaging the non-rich, and you are damaging people looking for jobs because, Bill, without capital and investment and saving, there is no way we can create jobs in this economy.
I agree with the last part of your statement. I disagree with the beginning of your statement. Look, we have had trickle-down economics. It has not worked. And you know that in the past 16 years, the middle class has seen their wages stagnant. And while a concerted effort has been made to make sure that the most wealthy people in this country, that is 1.5% of all of the earners in this country, have been basically earning much more than they started out with 10, 15 years ago. And this goes across party lines, Larry. You know, Paul, I have a great deal of respect for him. He's a very thoughtful individual. But we need to look at this all the way. What we were taxing in assets 20 years ago, what we were taxing in income, there is no question that we need a change in the code. There's no question about it. You've heard in the Ways and Means Committee, Paul, that there are sentiment on both sides of the aisle to really simplify the code, to change the code, to lower some rates, to even lower corporate rates. I think you have sentiment on both sides to do that. And the last administration had 8 years, and they did nothing. In fact, they added more pages to the tax code. Well, you know that, and I know that.
All right, I want to put a chart up. We have a chart of the history of U.S. tax rates going back to the very inception, which was 1913, and then ultimately the passage of the 16th Amendment. We'll put that chart up on the full screen. You can see that. Let's just look at that. The top rate started at 7%. That was back in 1913. Then during World War I, it jumped up to 77%. Then during Harding, Coolidge, and Andrew Mellon, it dropped all the way down to 25%. And then during the Depression years, it rose all the way up to 94%. It was John F. Kennedy who cut it to 70%. Reagan got it back to 28%. And it's been drifting in that 30 to 40% range now for 15 years or so. Paul Ryan, do you agree with Bill Pascrell that the middle class has suffered under low tax rates, let's say since the 60s or certainly since the 80s? Is that true?
I like Bill Pascrell. I just don't agree with Bill Pascrell on this. Look, I have a bill that gets us to the Calvin Coolidge tax rates. Whether it was Jack Kennedy or Ronald Reagan, lower taxes helps, lower tax rates. Look, it's really simple, Larry. You tax something more, you get less of it. You tax something less, you get more of it. You tax labor, capital, savings, investment more, you get less of those things, especially in this now 21st century global economy. So that is what we're simply saying. The Ways and Means Committee, which Bill and I serve on, has been a really busy committee, Larry. Since this new administration joined forces with this Democratic majority, $670 billion of new tax increases have been enacted into law.
So, Billy Pascrell, I just want to ask you, you heard Paul's response to you.
Yes, I did.
What I don't understand is the idea of taxing capital and saving and investment. You yourself told me there at the end of that first question that you agree you can't create jobs without capital.
No question about it.
Why would you want to raise the tax on capital gains and dividends and inheritance next year? Why?
In fact, we've joined in lowering some capital gains taxes, but we're not going to do that across the board because some of it is not fair. Look, we had a massive tax cut last year, February. That's on an average in the United States of America, $1,500 per family. In New Jersey, it was very, very successful. 97% got some benefit from some of those tax cuts. It cost $270 billion. We had tax cuts in 2001 and 2003, Larry and Paul, that we didn't pay for. It added to the deficit. So you could cut taxes. You can reduce the revenue that's going into the federal government. And if you don't pay for it, you wind up in a jam. And we wound up in a big jam in 2007 and 2008.
There's a big difference here. So what Bill was talking about were the Keynesian rebate tax cuts that passed last year.
The biggest tax cuts
rebates
for 2 years and 40 years.
2 years and 40 years.
That's right.
Okay, I haven't run the numbers on that, but the point I'm simply trying to make is, I believe in more of the Friedman permanent income effect, which is, okay, I'll trust you for argument's sake, what is one-time rebates, many of which went to non-taxpayers, do not lower the rate of taxation.
What do you
they
mean
do
by,
not increase incentives.
What do you mean by non-taxpayers, Paul?
So
people
who don't have tax liabilities. We already have the EIC.
If
people who don't have, it is scored in the Congress as an outlay. So if we're scoring it here as spending, then that's what it is spending. That's not Republicans saying it. That's the Joint Committee on Taxation, Congressional Budget Office. The point I'm making is, if you can let me, Bill,
I'm sorry,
is tax rate reductions. Growth occurs on the margin. Lowering the rates gives an incentive for more economic activity, for prosperity. And remember, when we're raising these tax rates, we're raising the goose that lays the golden egg, the small businesses.
Paul, if you allow me.
70% of our jobs come from small businesses. When you raise all these tax rates, you're punishing small business owners, you're punishing investment, you're punishing savings. That hurts job creation. Given a one-time pop on a one-time rebate might manipulate a GDP statistic in 1 or 2 quarters, but it does not lay the foundation for economic growth and job creation.
I'm glad you're talking about jobs, Paul, because that's very, very important. We've seen a very large turnaround since January of 2009 in the number of jobs we have lost in this country, and we're about to see a plus finally. We got a long way to go, but we've turned it around. If you want to look at graphs, take a look at that graph. I think that's very, very, very important. I also think putting money in people's pocket is important. For instance, the middle class. I don't believe the wealthiest people in our country, that 1.5%, deserve to have a huge tax cut on the thought that somehow that's going to create jobs in America.
But if you take
it certainly didn't happen in the 8 years that Bush was the president.
Just in a simple liquidity sense, Billy Pasquarello, if you tax those top-end earners, you're just pulling money out that will never be used for investment. That's what you're doing. And that means you're stopping people from getting a job, because without a business to create the job, without a business, you can't have investment without the business.
Larry, out of
what
context,
I'm saying is, all you're doing is draining investment liquidity out of the economy. Putting aside the incentive effects, which I believe in, but even in a cash flow sense, why do it? Those people, these are not bad people. The entrepreneurs create the great businesses that hire tens of thousands of jobs. All right, we're never going to finish.
We tried trickle down, Larry.
This is the debate we have every day here in Congress.
Right, let's have fairness. We don't need trickle down.
There's nothing.
Fairness and class warfare make for great politics. The problem is they make for really bad economics.
Paul Ryan, what about government spending trickle down? Because I'm still recovering from this Brookings Institution report that said that even to get the deficit 3% of GDP, in the light of all this massive government spending, we'd have to raise the top tax rates to, what, 80%?
Yes.
Okay? Now, isn't spending in some sense the root of all evil here?
It is, of course. And the spending that has occurred in this Congress alone is $1.8 trillion in new spending above the baseline that is now passed into law. So $670 billion in new taxes this year, this session, $1.8 trillion in new spending. So we are on a spending spree here in Congress. It's not even getting anywhere close to the deficit. We're doubling the debt in 5 years, tripling it in 10. We're courting a debt crisis. You know the Fed's going to start hitting the brakes next year. It's going to be a very ugly season in 2011, I think. I think we're going to have some good growth here in 2010. That's good. Bill's right. The economy is picking up steam. Let's not smother it. Let's not extinguish it next year with all these tax rate increases, with all this spending that brings up interest rates and, of course, inflation.
We're not going to snuff out growth. There's no question about it. You know that the middle class got it in the neck. You know wages have been stagnant, and it's unfair to you. If we take things out of context...
So we should spend and borrow more? So we should raise tax rates, spend
don't take
and
it out of
more?
context. Look at the facts of what's happened over the last 20 years and all of the the stratospheres of our economy from the top to the bottom. And you know that's why Republicans now support earned income tax credit. That's why we both agree that we should have changed AMT, hopefully on a permanent basis.
Bill Pascrell, you know you're one of my favorites in Congress, but look,
thank you.
Your own governor, Governor Chris Christie.
Oh, he's in big trouble, Larry.
He is slashing spending left and right, and it is wildly popular. The Tea Parties are out there with hundreds of rallies across the country.
It is essentially
a constitutional boycott against big government spending, Bill. You're running against the whole political tide, my friend.
Larry, well, sometimes you got to do those things. But, Larry, let me tell you something.
Well,
in New Jersey,
heroic about spending and taxing.
The suburban communities are finding out that their property taxes are going to go up because of the very cuts that this governor made.
But he's putting a cap on that. He's going to put a cap on that, too.
He's going to try to do that.
And when are you going to put a cap on spending, my friend? When are you going to cap spending in the Congress?
He's told people to vote against their Board of Education budgets.
Well,
it's very easy to lay off people. It's very easy to shut down programs in schools, and since you brought the subject up.
Yes.
And it's very easy to do those things, but people are hurting. They go on unemployment. That costs a lot of money. These things don't just fall out of the sky. I'm not saying that Mr. Christie, the governor, is wrong. He's had a tough deck of cards that was given to him. He had a bad hand, and he's got to deal with it, as the past two governors have.
Right.
But you don't do it in one swell. You don't do it with one swoop of the pen.
Well,
it's not going to happen that way.
I am for one swoop.
Maybe
Paul
I should
Ryan,
moderate this between the two of you guys.
Paul Ryan, in one swoop. Isn't the real tax burden on the economy government spending?
Yeah,
and isn't that, again, the root of the problem?
Why didn't you cut it when you were in the majority,
Hang on.
Hey, Bill, hang on a second, Bill.
Come on.
The new supply side effect could very well be cutting spending. That will help release growth because it will put some confidence in the credit markets that we're getting our act together finally.
All right, gentlemen, I got to leave it there. Sorry we couldn't agree. Bill Pascrell, thank you very much,
Paul,
as
take
always.
care. Larry, take
Paul
care.
Ryan, thank you very much, as always. Coming up, does big government spending equal huge tax hikes? Well, we're going to go live to the major Tea Party rallies in Washington and New York and see what the message is. Not only cut spending, we are going to have constitutional limits on spending, according to the Tea Partiers, and I think that's a hell of a good idea. We're going to talk to former